Snow fell heavily on the crowded streets of Manhattan that night, blurring the neon lights and muffling the noise of the city. Emily Parker, 28 years old and 5 months pregnant, hurried along the sidewalk, clutching her thin coat around her swelling belly. Her breath came in sharp bursts, fogging in the icy air. She wasn't just walking fast. She was running from the man who once promised to protect her. Ryan Cooper, her ex-husband, stalked a few steps behind. His voice cut through the wind. "Emily, stop running. You know you can't avoid me forever." Her heart pounded harder with every step. Emily had sworn never to see him again after the night he left her, choosing money and freedom over their unborn child. But here he was, chasing her, his tone filled with authority as if he still owned her. Fear prickled down her spine. She tried weaving through the crowd, but Ryan's shadow loomed closer. Panic rose. Emily knew she couldn't let him corner her. He had a way of twisting words, breaking her spirit, making her doubt herself. Tonight, in the cold and chaos, she had no one to rely on. Her eyes darted wildly, searching for an escape. And then, in one desperate second, she acted on instinct. A tall man in a long black coat stood near a bookstore entrance, scrolling through his phone. His broad shoulders and calm stance seemed like a fortress in the storm. Without thinking twice, Emily rushed forward and threw her arms around him. "Please," she whispered urgently, her voice trembling, "just play along." The man stiffened, startled. But when Ryan stormed toward them, the stranger's expression shifted in an instant. He wrapped his arm protectively around Emily, pulling her close as though she belonged to him. His gaze locked on Ryan's with quiet authority. Ryan froze, his eyes narrowing. "Who the hell is this?" The stranger didn't flinch. His deep voice carried weight, calm yet firm. "Her husband. Is there a problem?" Emily's knees nearly buckled. Husband? She hadn't expected him to say that. Her heart raced even faster, but not only from fear. There was something steady, almost safe in the stranger's presence. Ryan sneered, stepping back but not leaving. "Since when do you have a husband, Emily?" His voice dripped with suspicion. "Don't lie to me. I know you too well." Emily's lips parted, but no words came out. She tightened her grip on the man's coat, praying he would hold the line. The stranger's eyes softened briefly as he glanced at her, then returned to Ryan with an unshakable stare. "You heard her. She's not interested in talking to you. Walk away." The crowd, sensing tension, slowed down to watch. Emily felt hundreds of eyes burning into her. Shame, fear, and a strange spark of hope twisted inside her chest. Ryan clenched his fists but finally turned, muttering curses as he stormed off into the snow. Emily collapsed slightly against the stranger, overwhelmed by relief. She looked up to thank him, but before she could, she caught a flicker in his eyes. Something powerful, hidden, yet magnetic. Who was this man she had just thrown herself into the arms of? And why did his protective embrace feel like the beginning of something that could change everything? Long before Emily Parker found herself clinging to a stranger in the snow, she had once believed in fairy tales. At 22, she thought she had met her prince. Ryan Cooper was handsome, charming, and ambitious. He swept her off her feet with promises of a forever love. They married quickly, against her parents' cautious advice, because Emily's heart told her that Ryan would never let her down. In the early years, life felt sweet. They lived in a modest apartment in Brooklyn, and though money was tight, Emily didn't care. She worked part-time at a clothing store, while Ryan jumped from job to job, always dreaming of the big break that would make them rich. He said he would take care of her, that she deserved the world. Emily believed him. But slowly, the man she loved began to change. Ryan's dreams turned into excuses. He stayed out late, came home smelling of alcohol, and spent money they didn't have. Emily worked longer shifts, holding their life together while Ryan chased illusions. She prayed things would get better, that he was just going through a rough patch. Then came the moment that shattered her world. Emily discovered she was pregnant. Tears of joy filled her eyes when she told Ryan, imagining they would finally build the family they once talked about. But instead of joy, she saw fear flash across his face. "A baby? Now? Emily, we can barely take care of ourselves," he snapped. Her smile faltered. "Ryan, we'll figure it out. This could be what grounds us, what gives us purpose." But Ryan didn't see it that way. Over the next weeks, his temper worsened. He accused her of trapping him, of ruining his future. One night, after another heated argument, he slammed the door and didn't return until the next morning. Emily tried to hold on, believing deep down he would come around. She cooked his favorite meals, softened her words, even apologized when she hadn't done anything wrong. But Ryan's heart had already turned cold. The final blow came on a rainy evening. He confessed without guilt that he had been seeing another woman, someone older, wealthier, someone who could offer him opportunities. Emily felt her chest cave in as he tossed their marriage aside like an old coat. "Don't make this harder than it is," Ryan said, his eyes void of remorse. "You'll manage. You're strong. But me? I deserve more than this." And just like that, he left. Emily's life crumbled overnight. She was pregnant, abandoned, and broke. Friends turned distant, unsure how to help. Her parents were gone, lost in a car accident years before. With no one to lean on, Emily fought silently, forcing herself to get up every morning for the sake of her child. Yet, no matter how hard she tried, Ryan's shadow haunted her. And when she saw him again on that snowy Manhattan street, all the old pain rushed back. The betrayal, the loneliness, the scars he left behind. But Emily had no idea that the stranger who stood between her and Ryan was about to rewrite her story in ways she could never imagine. Brooklyn's winter nights were unkind, and inside her small, drafty apartment, Emily Parker wrapped herself in a thin blanket, listening to the hum of the old radiator that barely worked. The room was dimly lit by a single lamp, its yellow glow revealing cracked walls and water stains on the ceiling. This was her reality now, a life stripped down to survival. She placed a hand on her swollen belly and whispered softly, "It's just you and me, baby." Her voice cracked as she tried to smile for the little life growing inside her. She had to be strong, even if every day felt heavier than the last. Money was always short. Emily's job at the clothing store barely covered rent, and most nights she skipped dinner so she could save enough for prenatal vitamins and baby supplies. She learned to live with hunger, but not with the ache in her heart. Every time she passed a happy couple on the street or saw a father playing with his child, she felt the sting of what Ryan had taken from her. Still, Emily pushed herself to keep going. She woke up at 5 a.m., trudged through the snow to catch the subway, and worked long shifts on her feet. Customers barked orders, managers sighed impatiently, but she kept her head down. She needed the paycheck. She needed hope. When she returned home, the loneliness hit hardest. The silence of the apartment echoed her own thoughts, and sometimes she cried quietly into her pillow so no one would hear. She told herself she had chosen strength, that she didn't need anyone. But deep down, she longed for someone to hold her hand, to tell her everything would be okay. The stress began to wear on her. Some days, dizziness forced her to sit down in the stockroom at work, and her coworkers whispered about how pale she looked. Emily brushed it off, insisting she was fine. But inside, fear gnawed at her. What if she collapsed? What if something happened to the baby and there was no one to help? Yet even in her lowest moments, Emily refused to quit. She reminded herself of her parents' words before they passed away. "Emily, no matter how dark it gets, there's always a way forward." She clung to those words like a lifeline. One evening, after a long day at the store, Emily stopped at a small grocery shop. Her hands trembled as she counted the last of her crumpled bills to buy milk and bread. The cashier gave her a pitying look, but she forced a polite smile. Walking home in the snow, she held the grocery bag close, praying it wouldn't tear. As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, Emily's heart sank. The hallway light flickered, and on her door was a bright red notice. Final warning, rent past due. Her stomach tightened. If she didn't pay soon, she would be out on the street, with a baby on the way. Emily clutched the paper, her hands shaking. And in that desperate moment, she whispered to herself, "I can't do this alone. But who could possibly help me now?" The red eviction notice still burned in Emily's hands the following evening when a sharp knock rattled her apartment door. At first, she froze, assuming it was the landlord demanding rent. Her heart raced as she tucked the paper into a drawer. But when the knocking grew louder, heavier, almost aggressive, dread flooded her chest. She opened the door just a crack, and her blood ran cold. Ryan Cooper stood there, his smirk curling as though he had been waiting for this exact moment. Snowflakes clung to his dark hair, and the smell of whiskey drifted in as he leaned on the doorframe. "Well, well," he drawled. "Emily Parker, or should I say, Emily the Abandoned. Didn't think you'd slam the door in your husband's face, did you?" Her grip on the knob tightened. "You're not my husband anymore, Ryan. You lost that right the day you walked out." Ryan chuckled, low and bitter. "You think a piece of paper changes everything? You think I don't know you still need me?" His eyes flicked down to her belly. "Carrying my kid around like a reminder? You can't escape me, Emily." Her throat tightened, but she held her ground. "This child has nothing to do with you. You made your choice." Ryan pushed the door wider, stepping inside without permission. His voice lowered, venom lacing every word. "Don't play righteous with me. You're broke, about to be kicked out. How long before you come crawling back, begging for help?" Emily backed away, her hand instinctively shielding her stomach. "Get out, Ryan." But he didn't move. Instead, he laughed bitterly. "You really think you can raise this baby alone? You'll fall apart, Emily. You always needed me, even when you pretended you didn't." He leaned closer, his tone sharpening. "And when that little stranger in the coat shows up again? Don't think I didn't notice. You hugging him like he's your savior? Pathetic. Don't embarrass yourself." Her breath caught. Ryan had seen the moment in Manhattan, the desperate embrace that had saved her. The memory of the stranger's steady presence flashed in her mind, but she forced herself to stay silent. She couldn't let Ryan sense her weakness. Summoning what little courage she had left, Emily straightened her shoulders. "I would rather be alone forever than let you poison my life again." For a brief second, anger flared in his eyes, raw and dangerous. He leaned so close she could smell the alcohol on his breath. "Careful, Emily. You don't want to make me your enemy, because when I want something, I take it back. And believe me," his lips twisted into a cruel grin, "I always get what I want." With that, he slammed the door behind him as he left, his laughter echoing down the hallway. Emily locked the deadbolt, her hands trembling uncontrollably. She slid down against the door, tears burning her eyes, fear coursing through her veins. She whispered to her unborn child, voice breaking, "I won't let him take you from me. I swear I won't." But deep down, terror gnawed at her. Because Ryan wasn't just back. He was watching, waiting, and planning his next move. The city roared around her, but Emily Parker heard only the pounding of her own heartbeat. Ryan's sudden reappearance in her life had left her shaken for days, and tonight, as she walked down a bustling street in Manhattan after work, her nerves were on edge. Snowflakes swirled in the glow of street lamps, people hurried by with shopping bags, and taxis honked impatiently. Yet amid all the noise, Emily felt hunted. She turned her head, and there he was, Ryan. His tall frame cut through the crowd as he trailed her with predatory calm, his eyes locked on her like a hawk circling prey. The whiskey-fueled threats from her apartment echoed in her mind. She pulled her coat tighter and picked up her pace. "Emily?" His voice rose above the chaos, sharp and commanding. "Don't you dare walk away from me." Her breath came out ragged. She pushed through clusters of strangers, weaving between them, but Ryan's footsteps grew louder, closer. Her chest tightened with panic. She knew he wouldn't stop until he cornered her. And then it happened, her desperate moment of survival. Up ahead, a man stood outside a bookstore, his tall figure steady against the storm. He wore a long wool coat, his dark hair dusted with snow, and he held a phone in his hand, reading something with complete focus. To Emily, he looked like a lifeline. Without a second thought, she rushed forward and pressed herself against him, throwing her arms around his chest. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Please, just play along. Pretend you're with me." The man stiffened, clearly caught off guard. His phone slipped into his pocket as he instinctively steadied her by the shoulders. His eyes, deep and piercing, studied her for a split second. Then, as Ryan's voice cut through the crowd again, his entire posture changed. He pulled Emily firmly against his side, his arm wrapping around her like a shield. His broad frame blocked Ryan's path, and his voice came low but commanding. "She's with me. Is there a problem?" Ryan stopped dead in his tracks, fury flashing in his eyes. "Who the hell are you?" he barked, his voice dripping with jealousy. "Since when does Emily have a man?" Emily's stomach churned, fear and relief clashing inside her. The stranger hadn't hesitated. He had stepped into the role without question. Ryan's gaze darted between them, suspicious and venomous. You think you can hide behind some random guy, Emily? You think this will scare me off? The stranger's eyes didn't waver. His voice was steady, authoritative, and sharp as steel. Walk away. The crowd around them began to slow, curious eyes falling on the scene. Emily's cheeks burned with humiliation, yet she felt strangely safe. The man's presence was like a wall between her and the nightmare of her past. Ryan's fists clenched at his sides, his jaw tightening. For a moment, Emily thought he might attack, but then he spat curses under his breath and stalked off into the night, his threats lingering in the frosty air. Emily's body sagged with relief as she clung to the stranger's coat. She looked up at him, her lips parting to whisper a thank you. But when her eyes met his, she froze. There was something in his gaze, power, calmness, and something else she couldn't name. Who exactly was the man she had just pulled into her storm? And why did he look at her as if this encounter was only the beginning? Emily could hardly steady her breathing after Ryan disappeared into the snowy night. Her body still trembled as she clung to the stranger, her heart racing so fast she thought it might burst. Slowly, she pulled back, embarrassed by her desperation. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her cheeks flushed. "I didn't know what else to do. He wouldn't stop following me." The man studied her for a long moment. His eyes were sharp but not unkind, and though his expression was calm, there was a quiet strength in the way he held himself. Finally, he spoke in a voice steady and reassuring. "You don't need to apologize. No one should be forced to run like that." Emily bit her lip, fighting back tears. For the first time in months, someone hadn't judged her, scolded her, or turned away. Instead, this stranger, this man she had grabbed without thinking, had stepped in to protect her without hesitation. The cold wind whipped around them, and Emily shivered. The man noticed and gently asked, "Do you live nearby? It's not safe to be out here alone, especially with him lurking around." Emily hesitated. She didn't know his name, didn't know anything about him, and yet there was something solid about his presence. Still, caution tugged at her. "I'll be fine, I just need to get home." He gave a small nod, not pressing her. "At least let me walk you part of the way, just in case." They walked in silence through the snowy streets, the city lights reflecting in puddles of slush. Emily felt a strange comfort in his quiet company, as though his calmness absorbed some of her fear. She stole a glance at him, tall, broad-shouldered, with an air of quiet authority. There was something about him that didn't quite fit the image of an ordinary man on the street. When they reached a dimly lit corner near the subway, a sudden sound cut through the air. Ryan's voice. "Emily!" Her heart dropped. Ryan had circled around, waiting for her. He stepped out of the shadows, his grin sharp and cruel. "You didn't think you could shake me off that easy, did you?" Emily froze, panic clawing at her chest. But before she could react, the stranger stepped forward, placing himself squarely between her and Ryan. His voice came out low, firm and dangerous. "I told you to walk away." Ryan sneered, stepping closer. "And who are you supposed to be? Her bodyguard?" The stranger's gaze hardened. "Call me whatever you want, but if you touch her, you'll regret it." Emily's breath caught. The authority in his voice was unlike anything she had heard before. Calm but commanding, the kind of tone that left no room for doubt. Ryan's bravado faltered under that stare. For a long moment, tension thickened the air. Finally, he spat on the ground and muttered, "This isn't over." Then he stormed off once again, his threats lingering like smoke. Emily's knees buckled, and the stranger caught her before she could fall. His arm was steady, his warmth seeping through her coat. She clutched his sleeve, tears brimming in her eyes. For the first time, Emily felt a spark of safety, a fragile hope she hadn't known in years. She looked up at him, voice trembling. "I don't even know your name," and the stranger's answer would change everything. The cold wind howled between the buildings, but Emily barely noticed. She clung to the man's sleeve, still shaken by Ryan's threats. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "I don't even know your name." The man looked down at her, his expression softening. "Daniel," he said simply, "Daniel Grant." Emily repeated it under her breath, almost as if testing the sound. It carried weight, though she couldn't place why. She nodded, her eyes glistening. "Thank you, Daniel. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been there." Daniel didn't respond right away. He studied her carefully, as though trying to read the hidden story behind her frightened eyes. "You don't owe me thanks," he finally said. "But you should know. Men like him don't stop easily. You need to be careful." Emily sighed, exhaustion sinking into her bones. "I know, but I don't have the luxury of being careful. I'm just trying to survive." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Snow crunched beneath their feet as they walked. Daniel seemed to hesitate before asking quietly, "Do you trust me enough to let me buy you a coffee? Just to warm up?" She hesitated, wary of trusting anyone again. Yet something about his calm presence made her nod. "All right." They slipped into a small cafe tucked between office buildings. The warmth inside wrapped around Emily like a blanket, the scent of roasted beans filling the air. Daniel ordered 2 drinks without asking, black coffee for himself and hot chocolate for her. When he placed the cup in front of her, Emily blinked in surprise. "How did you know I don't drink coffee?" she asked. He gave a small smile. "You look like you needed comfort, not caffeine." Her chest tightened. No one had noticed such things about her in a long time. As they sipped in silence, Emily finally dared to study him properly. His tailored coat, the expensive watch peeking from his sleeve, the way people glanced at him with subtle recognition, it didn't match the image of an ordinary stranger. Something about Daniel screamed influence, control, and hidden power. She leaned forward cautiously. "Daniel, who are you really?" He raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I mean, men don't just step in like that without a reason. You carry yourself like someone used to being obeyed, and—" she gestured subtly to his watch. "That doesn't look like something a bookstore wanderer wears." Daniel's smile faded into a thoughtful line. For a moment, his gaze drifted to the snow outside. Then he spoke quietly, but firmly. "You're right. I'm not just some stranger. My family owns Grant Technologies. I run it now." Emily's eyes widened, her hands freezing around her cup. Grant Technologies. Even she, a woman who struggled to afford groceries, knew the name. A global empire. Billions in revenue. You're a billionaire?" she whispered, disbelief lacing her words. Daniel met her gaze steadily. "That doesn't matter right now. What matters is you're in danger, and I won't stand by and let that man torment you." Emily's heart pounded. Gratitude, fear, and disbelief crashed inside her like a storm. She had clung to him out of desperation, never knowing she had thrown herself into the arms of one of the most powerful men in New York. But what did it mean for her fragile, crumbling life that a billionaire had suddenly stepped into it? Emily Parker thought she could finally breathe after learning who Daniel really was. For the first time in months, she felt a sliver of hope. Someone strong and capable stood by her side. But Ryan Cooper wasn't the type to disappear quietly. 2 days later, Emily arrived at the clothing store where she worked. The morning rush was hectic, and she tried to bury herself in folding sweaters and greeting customers. But whispers started before she even clocked in. Heads turned, eyes lingered, and hushed conversations stopped whenever she walked past. Confused, Emily finally asked a coworker what was going on. The girl looked uneasy, then pulled out her phone. "Emily, I think you should see this." On the screen was a post on social media, already shared hundreds of times. It was Ryan's profile. His words were cruel, sharp daggers disguised as concern. "Some women just don't know how to be faithful. My ex-wife, pregnant with my child, already throwing herself at rich men in the streets. What kind of mother does that make her?" Attached to the post was a blurry photo, Emily hugging Daniel in Manhattan. From the angle, it looked staged, almost intimate. To strangers online, it painted her as shameless, heartless, and disloyal. Emily's stomach twisted as she scrolled through the comments. "Poor guy, dodged a bullet. She's disgusting. Imagine bringing a baby into that mess." Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. No, this isn't true," she whispered. By midday, customers were sneering at her. A mother tugged her child closer, whispering loud enough for Emily to hear. "That's her, the one all over the internet." Emily fought back tears as humiliation burned through her. She wanted to scream the truth, that she had been desperate, scared, and Ryan had driven her to it. But who would listen? Ryan's lies spread faster than her voice ever could. That evening, as she left the store, Ryan was waiting outside. He leaned against a lamppost, smirking like a predator who knew he had won. "Rough day?" he asked mockingly. "You can thank me for that." Now everyone sees who you really are." Emily glared at him, her hands clenched into fists. "Why are you doing this to me? Haven't you hurt me enough?" Ryan stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You embarrassed me, Emily. Running around with some stranger pretending he's your man? You think you can humiliate me and walk away? No, I make the rules, and the sooner you accept that, the easier this gets for you." Her voice trembled. "I'll never go back to you." Ryan's smirk widened. "We'll see, because the more you resist, the uglier I'll make this for you. Nobody believes a desperate, broke woman, but they'll believe me. They already do." Emily's knees weakened, but she stood her ground, tears brimming in her eyes. "You won't break me." Ryan leaned in close, whispering venomously, "I don't have to break you. The world will do it for me." And as he walked away, Emily realized Ryan wasn't just after her heart anymore. He was out to destroy her reputation, her dignity, and the very future of her unborn child. Emily Parker trudged home that evening, her body heavy with shame and exhaustion. Ryan's lies had spread like wildfire, and the weight of strangers' judgment pressed on her shoulders with every step. She wrapped her arms around her belly, whispering softly, "Don't listen to them, little one. We know the truth." But her voice cracked, and tears blurred her vision. Inside her apartment, she collapsed on the couch. The eviction notice still glared from the drawer. Ryan's threats echoed in her ears, and now the world believed she was nothing more than a shameless woman chasing money. Emily buried her face in her hands, sobbing quietly. She felt utterly alone. But she wasn't. Across the street, Daniel Grant sat in the back of a sleek black car, his eyes fixed on Emily's window. He hadn't meant to follow her. At least, that's what he told himself. But something about her fragility, her quiet strength, pulled him in. He had instructed his driver to stop, unable to leave while knowing she was suffering. Through the glass, he could see the faint silhouette of Emily hunched over, her shoulders shaking. His chest tightened. He had seen empires rise and fall, men beg for mercy in boardrooms, but nothing had stirred him like the sight of a young woman breaking under the cruelty of someone who once vowed to protect her. Finally, he stepped out of the car, his polished shoes crunching in the snow. He walked to her building and rang the buzzer. Emily startled at the sound. She wiped her tears quickly, hoping to compose herself, and cracked the door open. When she saw Daniel standing there, her breath caught. "Daniel, what are you doing here?" His gaze was steady, calm, but filled with something she couldn't name. "You shouldn't be alone right now." Her lips trembled. I don't want you to see me like this." "I already have," he said gently, "and it doesn't change a thing." Those words undid her. She stepped back, allowing him inside. The warmth of his presence filled the small, shabby apartment in a way that made her feel less suffocated by the peeling wallpaper and flickering light. They sat at her worn kitchen table. Emily gripped her mug of water, trying to steady her hands. "He's destroying me, Daniel. Everyone believes his lies. Customers look at me like I'm trash. Even my boss warned me that my reputation might hurt the store. What am I supposed to do?" Daniel leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "You fight back. You don't let him write your story. You're stronger than you think." Her eyes filled again. "But I'm so tired. I don't have money. I don't have family. It's just me and this baby. And Ryan, he won't stop." Daniel's jaw tightened, a flicker of steel in his eyes. "Then I'll stop him." Emily blinked, stunned. "Why? You don't even know me." He held her gaze. "Maybe not yet, but I know what it means to see someone crushed by injustice, and I won't stand by while he destroys you." Her heart pounded, torn between disbelief and the fragile hope his words sparked. But what Emily didn't know was that Daniel had the resources and the power to not only protect her, but to completely turn the tables on Ryan. The next day at the clothing store, Emily tried to keep her head down, folding jeans and greeting customers with a forced smile. But the sting of judgment was everywhere. Some whispered as they walked past. Others didn't bother to whisper at all. "Isn't that the woman from the Post?" a customer muttered loudly. "Throwing herself at some rich guy while pregnant. Shameful." Emily's throat tightened. She forced herself to keep working, but every word was a knife. Her manager pulled her aside at lunch, concern in his tone. "Emily, I like you, I do. But customers are complaining. Maybe it's best if you take a break until this blows over." Her heart sank. She needed every paycheck to survive, but she nodded weakly. I understand. As she walked out of the store, her head bowed. The afternoon air stung her face. She wanted to disappear. Ryan had succeeded. Her reputation was in tatters. She barely noticed the sleek black car that pulled up until the door opened and Daniel stepped out. Heads turned immediately. Daniel Grant wasn't just another man. He carried himself with the quiet authority of someone used to commanding attention. His tailored suit, his calm expression, his very presence made people stop mid-step. Emily froze. "Daniel, what are you doing here?" she whispered. He didn't answer her. Instead, he raised his voice so everyone on the busy street could hear. "I want to make something very clear." The crowd hushed. Phones appeared, recording. Emily's chest tightened as panic and confusion warred inside her. Daniel's gaze swept over the curious faces, then landed firmly on Emily. "This woman," he said, his voice strong and unwavering, "is not what the rumors say. She is brave, she is strong, and she deserves respect." Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Emily's eyes widened. Daniel wasn't just defending her, he was staking his reputation for her. He stepped closer, placing himself at her side. "Anyone spreading lies about her is a coward, and let me assure you, those lies will not go unanswered." The whispers shifted, doubt replacing judgment. Some people lowered their phones, suddenly uncertain. Emily's heart hammered in her chest, tears threatening to spill. But then, from across the street, Ryan's mocking laugh pierced the air. He strode forward, clapping slowly, his grin sharp as a blade. "Touching, Daniel, really touching. But you don't know the real Emily like I do." The crowd parted as Ryan approached, relishing the spotlight. "She's a liar. She's manipulative. She trapped me with a baby I never wanted, and now she's latching onto you because you've got money. Don't play the hero. She's not worth it." Emily's face burned with shame. The world seemed to tilt. Ryan's words echoing louder than Daniel's defense, but Daniel didn't flinch. His voice cut through the noise like steel. "You're the liar here, Ryan. And soon, everyone will know it." Gasps erupted again. Ryan's smug expression faltered, but his eyes hardened with fury. Emily stared at Daniel, her heart pounding. For the first time, someone had stood publicly by her side. But she also knew Ryan, and he wouldn't let this go unanswered. Because Ryan had just been challenged in front of everyone, and his revenge would be ruthless. That night, Emily Parker lay awake in her small apartment, staring at the cracked ceiling. Daniel's public defense replayed in her mind like a dream. His words had been strong, powerful, almost enough to drown out Ryan's venom. Almost. But the comments online told a different story. Ryan had doubled down, twisting Daniel's support into another attack. His new post read, "Of course she has a billionaire covering for her. Guess money buys loyalty too. Open your eyes, people. Emily's playing all of you." The flood of cruel comments hit Emily like waves, each one dragging her deeper under. "She's shameless. Gold digger. That poor baby doesn't stand a chance." Emily clutched her phone until her hands shook, then threw it aside. She curled on the couch, sobs racking her body. "Why won't it stop?" she whispered into the silence. The walls of the apartment seemed to close in on her. Bills piled on the counter, the eviction notice still loomed, and exhaustion weighed down her pregnant body. She thought of her parents, how they used to tell her she was stronger than she believed. But tonight, she couldn't find that strength. She pressed her hand to her belly, guilt slicing through her heart. "I'm so sorry, baby. I wanted to protect you, but I'm failing." The pressure inside her chest grew until she couldn't breathe. Panic clawed at her, dizziness clouding her vision. She stumbled to the bathroom, splashing cold water on her face. In the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Pale skin, swollen eyes, and a hollow sadness that seemed to devour her. Her phone buzzed again. Another cruel message. Another reminder that Ryan's lies were spreading faster than truth ever could. Emily sank to the floor, hugging her knees, whispering through her tears, "Maybe I can't fight this. Maybe he's already won." At that moment, her strength cracked. She felt utterly defeated, as if every ounce of fight had been drained from her. She imagined Ryan smiling, satisfied, and the thought nearly broke her in half. Hours later, she found herself standing by the window, staring out at the cold city lights. Snow drifted lazily from the sky, blanketing the streets below. Somewhere out there, Daniel existed, powerful, steady, unshaken. She thought of his words, his vow to stop Ryan. For a brief flicker of time, she wanted to believe him. But doubt whispered louder. Why would a billionaire really care about someone like me? Tears blurred her vision again. Emily pressed her forehead against the glass, whispering, "I'm nobody. He'll see that soon enough." As she finally collapsed into bed, exhaustion pulling her under, one thought consumed her. Maybe she couldn't escape Ryan. Maybe no matter how far she ran, no matter who stood beside her, her past would always poison her future. And Emily had no idea that Ryan's next move was already in motion. One that would push her to the breaking point and force Daniel to reveal just how far he was willing to go to protect her. The storm inside Emily's life reached new heights when whispers about Ryan began to circulate in places he hadn't expected. For weeks, he had controlled the narrative, painting Emily as the villain and himself as the wounded ex-husband. But the truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface, no matter how many lies try to bury it. Daniel's people, the quiet, unseen network of assistants, lawyers, and investigators, had been digging. He hadn't told Emily yet, but he knew Ryan's smug arrogance would eventually be his undoing. And when one of Daniel's investigators handed him a slim folder filled with photos and documents, Daniel's jaw tightened. Inside were snapshots of Ryan at luxury restaurants, holding hands with a woman twice his age, Vivian Hart, a wealthy real estate investor known for her ruthless ambition. Receipts showed lavish gifts Ryan couldn't possibly afford on his own. Emails revealed promises of a new future together if Ryan proved himself useful. Daniel closed the folder with quiet finality. The story was clear. Ryan hadn't left Emily because he was scared of fatherhood. He had left because he was chasing money, clinging to Vivian as his golden ticket. And now, even as he tried to destroy Emily's dignity, he was living off the scraps of another woman's fortune. Meanwhile, Emily remained unaware. She sat in her tiny apartment, staring at the eviction notice again, wondering how much longer she could endure. When Daniel appeared at her door that evening, his presence filled the room like warmth against the winter chill. "You look like you haven't slept," he said gently. Emily gave a hollow laugh. Who could sleep with the whole world against them? Daniel's expression hardened. "Not the whole world, Emily, and certainly not me. I have something you need to see." He laid the folder on her table. Emily hesitated before opening it, her hands trembling as she flipped through the photographs. Her breath caught. There was Ryan, laughing, kissing Vivian's hand, whispering in her ear. Document after document confirmed the betrayal. Her chest constricted. He left me for her? For money? Daniel's voice was steady, though his eyes burned with quiet anger. Yes, and while you were scraping by, starving yourself to buy baby supplies, he was living in luxury on someone else's dime. His lies are about power, not truth. Tears welled in Emily's eyes, but this time they weren't just of sorrow, they were of fury. Every sleepless night, every cruel word Ryan had thrown at her, every humiliating post he'd written, it had all been while he was basking in comfort with another woman. Her fists clenched. He destroyed me to hide his own shame. Daniel leaned closer, his voice low but firm. "Now you have the truth, and when the time is right, the world will see him for what he is." Emily's heart pounded, a strange strength flickering inside her chest. For the first time, she felt the possibility of justice. But neither she nor Daniel realized that Ryan already suspected his secret was unraveling, and he was prepared to strike first, no matter the cost. The invitation came unexpectedly. Daniel told Emily that his company was hosting a charity gala in Manhattan, a grand event attended by politicians, celebrities, and powerful business leaders. At first, Emily refused. "I don't belong in places like that," she whispered, smoothing down her worn sweater. But Daniel shook his head firmly. "Yes, you do, and I want you there by my side." His words warmed her, but fear gnawed at her. What if Ryan showed up? What if people whispered about the rumors, the posts, the lies? She couldn't bear the thought of being shamed in front of strangers, much less in front of Daniel's world. Still, when the evening came, she found herself in a borrowed gown Daniel's assistant had chosen, simple yet elegant. For the first time in months, she looked at her reflection and barely recognized herself. A spark of hope flickered. Maybe she could start over. The gala was dazzling. Crystal chandeliers glimmered overhead, violins played softly in the background, and waiters floated through the crowd with trays of champagne. Emily clung to Daniel's arm as they entered, her nerves rattling. Whispers rippled through the room. eyes turning toward them. She could feel the weight of judgment already. At first, things went smoothly. Daniel introduced her to colleagues, speaking proudly of her strength rather than her struggles. For a moment, Emily allowed herself to breathe. Then Ryan appeared. He strode into the ballroom with Vivian Hart on his arm, her glittering gown announcing her wealth and power. Ryan's smug grin widened the moment he spotted Emily. The crowd parted subtly, sensing drama. "Well, well," Ryan said loudly, drawing attention. "If it isn't Emily, doesn't she look lovely tonight, folks? Amazing what a billionaire's money can do." Laughter rippled through a few guests. Emily's cheeks burned, shame washing over her. She wanted to shrink, to disappear. Ryan wasn't finished. "Careful, Daniel. This one's got a history of trapping men. Ask me how I know." His cruel chuckle echoed through the ballroom. Gasps spread across the room. Emily's vision blurred with tears. Every insecurity, every fear of being judged, now played out under the harsh gaze of Manhattan's elite. Her throat tightened. She couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. But Daniel stepped forward, his arm wrapping firmly around Emily's waist. His voice carried across the room, calm but sharp as steel. "Enough." The laughter died instantly. All eyes turned to him. Daniel's gaze locked on Ryan. "You stand here, pretending to be a man of truth, while everyone in this room knows exactly who funds your lifestyle. Do you really want me to pull out the receipts?" Murmurs erupted. Vivian stiffened at Daniel's words, her hand slipping from Ryan's arm. Ryan's smug grin faltered, his jaw tightening. Daniel's voice rose, unwavering. "This woman is not what you say she is. She is stronger than you'll ever be. And while you run from responsibility, she's the one facing the world with courage. That makes her more than you'll ever deserve." The room fell silent. Emily's chest heaved as tears streamed down her face, not from shame this time, but from the shocking reality of someone standing up for her so boldly. And in that silence, Ryan's mask cracked, revealing fury so deep it promised he would strike back harder than ever. The glitter of the gala faded quickly once Emily returned to her small Brooklyn apartment. The gown Daniel's assistant had lent her now hung limply over a chair, and the silence of the room felt deafening after the music and chatter of Manhattan's elite. Emily sat on the edge of her bed, clutching her belly, tears stinging her eyes. Daniel's defense had silenced the crowd, yes. For one brief moment, she had felt protected, cherished even. But in the quiet aftermath, Ryan's venomous words replayed over and over in her mind. "Careful, Daniel. This one's got a history of trapping men." She squeezed her eyes shut, shame flooding her. Was that how everyone saw her now? A desperate, pregnant woman clinging to a powerful man for survival? Her phone buzzed with messages, some supportive, many cruel. Screenshots from the gala were already circulating online. Ryan's smirk captured beside Vivian's diamonds, Emily's tear-streaked face beside Daniel's arm around her waist. The captions were merciless. "Billionaire saves his mistress." Is this love? Or just another gold digger's scheme? Emily tossed the phone aside, her chest aching. She whispered to herself, "I never asked him for anything. I never wanted his money. Why can't they see that?" Her mind spiraled. Maybe Ryan was right. Maybe Daniel didn't truly understand what he was getting into. He had a world of influence and wealth, while she had nothing but debt, shame, and a child on the way. Wouldn't it be easier for him to walk away? When Daniel arrived later that evening, his presence once again filled the small apartment like a protective shield. But Emily couldn't meet his eyes. "You shouldn't have defended me like that," she muttered, her voice cracking. Daniel frowned. "Why not?" "Because now everyone thinks I'm using you," she snapped, the words breaking through her sobs. "They already hated me. Now they'll hate you too. You don't need this, Daniel. You don't need me." He stepped closer, but she pulled back, shaking her head. "I'm nothing but a burden. You saw the way they looked at me. I don't belong in your world. I can't even pay my rent, and you," her voice faltered, "you deserve someone who can stand beside you, not drag you down." Daniel's jaw tightened, his eyes burning with intensity. "Emily, look at me." She finally lifted her tear-filled gaze to his. His voice softened but remained firm. "You are not a burden. You are not weak. You are carrying life, surviving every day against impossible odds. That makes you stronger than anyone in that room tonight. And if anyone dares to say otherwise, they'll answer to me." Her breath hitched, her walls cracking under his certainty. She wanted to believe him. wanted to lean into the safety of his words. But fear still gnawed at her heart. What if he eventually saw what Ryan saw? What if his kindness had limits? Emily turned away, clutching her belly, whispering, "I'm scared, Daniel. I don't know how much more I can take." And outside, in the shadows of the street below, Ryan stood watching, his fury simmering, ready to make his next devastating move. The night after the gala left Emily restless. She tossed and turned in her small bed, Ryan's sneers echoing in her head. Her heart ached, torn between gratitude for Daniel's defense and fear that she was dragging him into a storm he didn't deserve. She sat at the kitchen table long past midnight, staring at the eviction notice that still mocked her from the drawer. Tears stung her eyes as she whispered to her unborn child, "I don't know how to do this anymore. I don't want to lose him, but I don't want him to lose himself because of me." A knock broke the silence. Emily startled, wiping her eyes quickly. She opened the door to find Daniel standing there, his expression unreadable, but his eyes heavy with determination. "Daniel, it's late," she said softly. "You shouldn't be here." "I couldn't sleep," he admitted. "Not when I know you're sitting here blaming yourself for things you don't deserve." Emily lowered her gaze, shame pressing down on her shoulders. "You don't understand. I'm ruining your reputation. People think I'm using you. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am just—" Her voice cracked. "Just a mess you felt sorry for." Daniel stepped inside, closing the door firmly behind him. "Don't say that again." His voice was calm but carried a weight that silenced her. He moved closer, his eyes locking on hers. "Emily, do you know why I defended you? Do you know why I keep showing up?" She swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. "Because you pity me?" Daniel shook his head slowly. "No, because I care about you, more than I should, more than I ever expected to." Her breath caught, her chest tightening as his words sank in. "Daniel?" He took her trembling hands in his warmth steadying her. "From the moment you ran into me on that street, I saw something in you. Strength hidden beneath fear. A woman fighting for her child, fighting against the world, even when the world tried to crush her. You're not a burden, Emily. You're the bravest person I've ever met." Tears spilled down her cheeks as she shook her head. "But I'm broken. I have nothing. No money, no home, no family. I can't give you anything." Daniel's grip tightened gently. "You've already given me something. You've reminded me what matters. It isn't money or power, it's truth, it's courage, it's love." Her heart skipped, the word hung between them, fragile yet powerful. Daniel's voice softened. "Yes, I love you, Emily, and I will protect you and your child with everything I have. No matter what Ryan does, no matter how ugly it gets, I won't walk away." Her tears fell freely now, her heart overwhelmed by the weight of his vow. She wanted to believe it, to let herself fall into the safety of his promise. But fear still lingered. Could love really shield her from Ryan's wrath? And as Daniel's words wrapped around her like a lifeline, Ryan was already plotting his cruelest strike yet, one designed to tear apart everything Emily had just begun to hope for. Ryan Cooper had always believed he was untouchable. For months he'd spread lies about Emily, twisting the truth until her name was dragged through the mud. But arrogance blinds even the clever, and Ryan never imagined someone like Daniel Grant would dig into his secrets. The night after Daniel confessed his love to Emily, word began to spread among New York's elite. Photos surfaced. Ryan whining and dining. Vivian Hart, the wealthy real estate mogul, nearly 15 years his senior. At first, whispers moved quietly through upper circles, but soon the story leaked to the press. Headlines screamed across news sites. Ryan Cooper living off wealthy mistress while smearing ex-wife. Betrayed pregnant woman speaks, truth behind social media feud. The irony cut deep. Ryan, who accused Emily of being a gold digger, was exposed as exactly that. Emily saw the articles on her phone while folding laundry in her dim apartment. Her hands shook as she scrolled through the images of Ryan laughing beside Vivian in expensive suits and watches she knew he could never afford. Tears stung her eyes, but this time they weren't just of pain, they were of vindication. Daniel arrived minutes later, already aware of the headlines. "It's starting," he told her calmly. "The truth is clawing its way out." Emily pressed a hand to her chest. People finally see him for who he is? Daniel's jaw tightened. Some will. But Ryan won't go down quietly. He'll fight harder now, because men like him can't stand losing control. He was right. That very evening, Ryan stormed into a private club in Manhattan, furious that his perfect facade was crumbling. Vivian confronted him, waving the tabloids in his face. "You told me she was the problem." Vivian snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Now everyone knows you're nothing but a leech." Ryan's charm slipped. For the first time he looked cornered. "Vivian, listen, this is just gossip. Don't play me for a fool," she hissed, shoving past him. "You're finished, and so is whatever you thought you had with me." Abandoned by the very woman he clung to, Ryan's fury burned hotter. He left the club humiliated, muttering Emily's name like a curse. Back in Brooklyn, Emily sat on her couch, clutching Daniel's hand as they watched the news coverage together. For once, the world wasn't mocking her. It was mocking him. But relief was fleeting. Emily knew Ryan. Humiliation would only drive him to darker places. She turned to Daniel, fear clouding her eyes. "He won't stop. This will only make him angrier." Daniel squeezed her hand firmly. "Then we'll be ready for him. He can try to twist lies, but the truth is on your side now." Her heart wanted to believe him, but unease gnawed at her. She knew Ryan too well. He didn't care about truth or dignity, only power. And when cornered, he became dangerous. What Emily and Daniel didn't know was that Ryan was already plotting his most vicious strike, a plan that would drag Emily back into the spotlight and test the strength of her newfound love. The city buzzed with chatter about Ryan Cooper's scandal. For once, Emily wasn't the subject of ridicule. Ryan was. But humiliation only fueled his rage. He had lost Vivian, lost credibility, and worst of all, lost control of Emily. And Ryan Cooper was a man who couldn't stand losing. He needed one last strike, something public, something dramatic, and he knew exactly where to do it. Daniel Grant was scheduled to give a keynote speech at a high-profile business conference in Midtown Manhattan. Leaders from across the country would be present, along with reporters, cameras, and influencers who would blast every word online. Ryan saw it as the perfect stage to twist the knife. The day of the event, Emily debated whether she should attend. Part of her wanted to hide away forever, but Daniel insisted gently. "I want you there," he said. "Not because of the cameras, but because I want you by my side." Her heart softened at his words, but nerves tangled her stomach. She finally agreed, slipping into a modest dress. Nothing flashy. She didn't want to draw attention. But little did she know, attention would find her anyway. The conference hall glittered with chandeliers and echoed with chatter. Emily clutched Daniel's hand as they entered, whispers trailing them like shadows. Some faces smiled politely, others studied her with thinly veiled judgment. Daniel took the stage to applause, his calm authority captivating the room. Emily sat near the front, her heart swelling with pride as he spoke about resilience, truth, and building a future that couldn't be shaken by greed or lies. His words weren't just about business, they were about her, about them. And then the disruption came. From the back of the hall, Ryan's voice cut through the applause. "Funny speech, Daniel. Shame it's all built on a lie." Gasps rippled through the audience. Cameras whipped toward the commotion as Ryan strode forward, his suit wrinkled, his eyes wild with fury. Security moved, but he shoved past them, charging toward the stage. Emily's blood ran cold. "Oh no," she whispered. Ryan pointed a shaking finger at her. "That woman! She's not a victim. She's a manipulator. She trapped me. She'll trap you too, Daniel. Don't let her ruin your life the way she ruined mine." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Phones recorded every second. Emily's face burned, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might stop. She wanted to run, to vanish, but Daniel's voice rang out, steady and unshaken. "Sit down, Ryan," he commanded, his voice sharp as steel. "Your lies don't hold power here anymore." But Ryan only grew louder. "You all think she's innocent? She's nothing. Look at her. Clinging to a billionaire to save herself. That baby, it's a chain she'll use to keep him tied to her forever." Emily's tears blurred her vision. The cruelty was unbearable, and yet the cameras kept rolling. The crowd kept watching, every whisper magnified. Daniel stepped forward, his expression fierce, protective. His next words would decide everything. But before he could speak, Ryan lunged closer, forcing a confrontation that would leave the entire room gasping. The conference hall was frozen in shock as Ryan Cooper stormed toward the stage, his face twisted with rage. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, and the crowd collectively held its breath. Emily's hands shook in her lap. terror gripping her as Ryan pointed accusingly at her, spewing venom for the entire world to hear. "She's a liar. She ruined me, and now she's using you, Daniel. Don't let her destroy you the way she destroyed me." His voice cracked with desperation, but his words echoed through the hall like thunder. For a moment, Emily wanted to disappear, to sink into the floor and never be seen again. Every eye in the room bore down on her, weighing her soul with judgment. But then Daniel moved. Calmly, deliberately, he stepped forward, his tall frame commanding the stage. His voice was measured, but it carried the weight of authority that silenced the murmurs. "You say she ruined you, Ryan," Daniel said, his gaze cutting through the chaos. "But the truth is you ruined yourself." Gasps filled the room. Daniel lifted his hand and one of his assistants stepped forward with a tablet. On the screen were photos, Ryan dining lavishly with Vivian Hart, her hand in his, their expensive lifestyle documented in black and white. Receipts, dates, even emails scrolled across the display. "This," Daniel continued, his voice calm but searing, "is who you really are. While Emily was scraping by, working to feed herself and your unborn child, you abandoned her for a wealthier woman. You spread lies to cover your own betrayal, and now you stand here pretending to be the victim." The room buzzed with murmurs, phones recording every word. Ryan's face turned crimson. "Those are lies, fabricated," he shouted, but his voice cracked, betraying him. Daniel didn't flinch. "No, these are facts, verified, documented, undeniable. And if anyone here doubts it, they can find tomorrow's headline confirming everything." Emily's breath caught as the crowd shifted. Whispers turned into disgusted stares directed not at her, but at Ryan. Vivian herself had arrived, perhaps to save face, but when she saw her name splashed across the evidence, she turned away coldly, refusing to meet Ryan's desperate eyes. "You used her, Ryan," Daniel pressed, his tone firm but steady. "You abandoned your own child. You humiliated the woman you once vowed to protect. That's who you are. Not a man, not a husband, not even a father, just a coward who runs when life gets hard." The audience erupted in gasps, some clapping softly, others shaking their heads at Ryan's disgrace. The cameras caught it all, his downfall, his exposure, his humiliation. Ryan's chest heaved with fury. He looked around, desperate for someone to take his side, but there was no one left. Even the reporters who once printed his lies now smelled blood in the water. Emily sat frozen, tears streaming down her cheeks. Not from shame this time, but from relief. For the first time, the truth wasn't hidden. The world was seeing Ryan for what he really was. Ryan roared, slamming his fist against the podium. "This isn't over, Daniel. You haven't seen the last of me." And as security closed in, dragging him from the stage, Ryan's promise lingered like a storm cloud, warning Emily and Daniel that his final act of vengeance was still to come. The conference hall erupted into chaos as Ryan was dragged out by security, his shouts echoing uselessly down the marble corridors. Reporters swarmed the stage, cameras flashing, questions flying. But the damage was already done. His reputation, what little remained, was in shreds. By the next morning, headlines blared the truth across every outlet. Ryan Cooper exposed, affair with millionaire mistress revealed. Ex-husband's lies collapse as billionaire Daniel Grant defends pregnant woman. The internet turned quickly. Those who once mocked Emily now questioned Ryan's character. Support poured in from strangers online. Messages of encouragement, apologies for believing his lies, even offers of help. For the first time in months, Emily wasn't painted as the villain. She was finally seen as the survivor she truly was. Still, Emily couldn't shake the whirlwind inside her. She stood before the mirror in her small apartment, looking at herself not with shame but with something new. Resolve. The woman staring back was tired. Yes, but stronger. Her scars hadn't destroyed her. They had forged her. Daniel arrived that evening, his presence filling the space as always. He carried a quiet smile, his eyes softer than she'd ever seen. "You should be proud, Emily. The truth is out." She nodded, but her voice trembled. "It doesn't feel real. For so long, I thought I'd never escape him. And now." She placed a hand on her belly. "Maybe my baby will finally have a chance at peace." Daniel stepped closer, gently lifting her chin so her eyes met his. "Not just peace, a future. One where you decide who you are. Not Ryan, not the lies, just you." Her heart swelled at his words. For so long she had been defined by abandonment, by struggle, by survival. But now, standing here with Daniel, she began to imagine a different life. One where she wasn't just running from the past, but building something new. Meanwhile, Ryan's world collapsed. Vivian Hart severed ties immediately, leaving him penniless. His social media accounts were flooded with insults, his former friends distancing themselves quickly. Landlords, creditors, and lawyers lined up at his door. The man who once sneered at Emily's poverty now tasted disgrace and isolation. But Emily didn't revel in his downfall. Instead, she focused on her transformation. She returned to the clothing store not as the subject of whispers, but as a woman admired for her courage. Coworkers who once doubted her now greeted her warmly, some even apologizing. Customers smiled instead of sneering. The change was subtle but powerful. It was as if the weight of shame had finally lifted. One evening, Daniel invited her to his home in the Hamptons. The sprawling estate was everything she'd never imagined for herself. Wide glass windows overlooking the ocean, warm light spilling into elegant rooms. Yet what struck her most wasn't the wealth, it was the serenity. For the first time, Emily felt safe. But as she stood on the balcony, gazing at the horizon, a chill crept up her spine. Peace felt fragile, too fragile. Because in the shadows of New York, Ryan wasn't finished. His pride, though shattered, still burned. And Emily sensed that before her new life could truly begin, one final confrontation was waiting. The storm that had haunted Emily Parker's life reached its breaking point one bitter winter night. She and Daniel sat quietly in his Hamptons home, the crackling fire casting soft light across the room. For the first time in months, she felt at peace. But deep inside, she knew Ryan would never let go without one last fight. Her fear proved right. Ryan came crashing back into her world, desperate and reckless. He showed up outside Daniel's estate, shouting her name into the darkness, his voice slurred with alcohol and rage. Security rushed to stop him, but Emily stepped forward, her heart pounding. She knew this was it, the moment she had been running from for so long. Daniel tried to shield her, but she shook her head. No, I have to face him. She stepped out into the icy night, snow crunching under her shoes. Ryan's eyes were wild, his clothes disheveled, his pride hanging by a thread. You think you've won? He spat. You think you can erase me? I'm still the father of that child. Emily's breath shook, but her voice came strong. A father protects. A father loves. You abandoned us the moment you walked away. You don't get to claim that title anymore. Ryan staggered closer, his words sharp with venom. You were nothing without me. Nothing. And you'll go back to nothing once he realizes what you are. He jabbed a finger toward Daniel, who stood steady behind her. But Emily didn't flinch. For the first time, she didn't shrink under his words. You're wrong, Ryan. I was something before you, and I'll be something after you. You didn't break me. You made me stronger. The words hung in the frozen air. Ryan's face twisted with fury, but the fight drained out of him as security finally closed in, pulling him back. He shouted curses, promises of revenge, but they rang hollow now. Everyone had seen his true face. His downfall was complete. Emily stood tall, tears streaking her cheeks, but they weren't tears of fear anymore. They were tears of release. The weight of years of pain finally lifted, leaving space for something new. Daniel stepped forward, wrapping his arms around her. His voice was soft but steady. It's over, Emily. He can't hurt you anymore. Her body shook as she leaned into him, whispering, for the first time, I believe that. In the weeks that followed, Ryan disappeared from headlines, his reputation in ruins, his life in shambles. Emily, however, began to bloom. With Daniel's support, she found stability, but more importantly, she found herself again. She prepared for motherhood, not with fear, but with hope. On a crisp spring morning, Emily held her newborn daughter in her arms, tears of joy streaming down her face. Daniel sat beside her, his eyes filled with pride and love. You're not alone anymore, he whispered, kissing her forehead. Emily looked down at her baby, then back at Daniel. For the first time, she saw not just survival, but a future. Bright, safe, and full of love. Her story wasn't one of ruin anymore. It was one of redemption. And as she cradled her daughter, Emily knew the truth. She had faced the storm, and she had won. So the story has finally come to an end, my dear friends. And if you're still here with us right now, it means something in this journey touched your heart. Emily's story reminds us of an important truth. No matter how heavy betrayal or suffering feels, we always carry the power to rise above it. The Stoic Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Like Emily, we may not control what others do to us, but we can choose how to respond, with dignity, with courage, and with hope. So let this story be your reminder. Storms don't last forever, and healing is always possible. If this message resonated with you, please like this video, share it with someone who might need encouragement, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories of resilience and redemption. Together, we keep hope alive.